How we doing, guys? Let's see if we can get good resources here. I'm going to post a comment that I will pin while we wait for some others to join. It's good to see you guys. You're live with TJ. I'm TJ, and I am in Florida right now, normally in California. Took us a minute to get some things set up. As expected, have to expect some challenges along the way. We're actually going to get some, we're going to get, let's see, Reed, good to see you. I'm actually going to get this live on, there we go, on Instagram as well. You guys hear me okay? If you can hear me okay in the comments, go ahead and just give me a thumbs up, give me a like while we get set up. We're on IG Live as well. What's going on, Grant? Audio's good? Excellent. Good to have you guys. Our first time using Facebook Live for our Wednesday nights that we've been doing on live with TJ, but we've had a whole lot of other people other than TJ, other than myself joining, and they've been giving great perspective on a whole lot of different things. If you're on Facebook Live, you'll see that I posted an entire free webinar on the truth about anxiety. And if you want more content of what you're listening to today, what you're about to listen to, there's a whole nother hour and 15 minutes, hour 18 minutes that's available to you, and it is a free resource right now. You can also stay connected with us, of course, and you can, send us your email, and I'll let you guys know. Grant, good to see you, man. I'll let you guys know when we are doing more live streams or even live events. So if there's some personal updates and some other things, options and opportunities to see if we ever have the chance to work together. But, mainly we just want to provide some value for you guys. And so we hope that right now in today's live session we postponed. Today's live session was actually supposed to be on how to use the power of breath to reduce stress. And we were going to, good to see you guys. Go ahead and post if you're watching on Facebook Live. Go ahead and post. Would love to hear where you're watching from. This is going to be, I know the topic is trauma and what is trauma, but this is going to be positive, educational, helpful. Esther, good to see you. Congratulations. Esther just graduated Harvard, Kennedy School. A lot of people have some really special things happen in their lives, and want to acknowledge that as well as all the other things that are happening. Really good to see you guys. Jess, good to see you. But yeah, would love to see where you guys are watching from. So post in the comments and just let us know. So I'm currently in Florida. The topic today is trauma. I am actually in my dad's office. My father passed away in 2017, and I'll get into that in a second. Now, we were supposed to, like I was about to say, we were supposed to have a live webinar, and we do these, it's a free invite, but these private live webinars every Wednesday, live with TJ on Wednesdays. And we were supposed to do one today on how to use the power of breath to reduce stress. And we had to postpone it for good reason. So Danny Yeager, who is a founder of a CrossFit gym in Minneapolis, he's an excellent performance coach. I've had the chance to even work with him just through a workshop setting in the art of breath, and he's a breath specialist among a number of other things. A great guy, but he actually lives about 2 blocks from where a whole lot of things have been happening in Minneapolis. And so his business and I guess his home are one or the other or both are just within walking distance. And so with everything going on, we just said, hey, let's put a pause on that. There's a lot of other things that are more important, more pressing right now. And so, even what I want to acknowledge first is, like, even as you're coming into this right now tonight, you guys are coming into this with, your normal life going on. You're coming into, whatever circumstances that you've been living in with the pandemic. You're coming into all of these different things that are happening in the world on top of what your normal life is. And so I want to kind of first frame this conversation in that context, is that, we all have our own personal struggles and challenges. And I don't want you to forget about those when there are other struggles and challenges highlighted to you. And I want those other struggles and challenges that are highlighted to you to be helpful in your personal growth and in other people's journey of growth. And so today I want to hopefully just shed some light on people's personal difficulties that they might have surfacing right now and not even know why or how they're surfacing, right? And so, Jess, it's good to see you. Congratulations. I see marriage and in your photo, but good to see you. And so I want to highlight that you have your own personal challenges and difficulties and things in your life that might be surfacing right now that you haven't maybe even been able to acknowledge or had the opportunity to overcome, to heal from. And so that's how we're going to start this conversation. Okay, so I want to start it with the idea that every single person has something that they whether they've knowingly addressed it or unknowingly lived with it, right? They have it. Whether you've come from a good home, a good family, or you came from a rough home and a broken family, completely broken family, we all have things in our lives that just aren't right. They aren't whole. And those things in our lives have shaped how we experience and encounter not just the world around us, but ourselves and even God. And our perspectives matter. So I want to affirm that your perspectives and your emotions and feelings and everything that you're experiencing right now should be validated. Like, that should be validated. I also want to let you know that this will be an opportunity to maybe highlight more things that you haven't maybe even thought about or have started to become aware of and maybe haven't been able to put language to. Okay? So if you're watching on IG Live, I see you guys. Good to see you, Noel, Cheryl, CJ. So first, trauma. Okay, so I never really associated with the word trauma. I just never associated with it. Up until about 5 years ago, I was raised in a good home with a good family. I went to a good school, and privilege was a big part of my upbringing. If I had that lens on my life and I was looking at the positive, yeah, I had a lot of privilege. What I didn't necessarily know or understand is that we all have some sort of privilege in our life. We also all have some sort of suffering in our life. And in my attempt to see the positive, I often overlooked, I say often, I was going to say I overlooked, but I often overlooked maybe some of the more challenging parts of my life that I didn't necessarily ask for. I'm going to get into that in a little bit, but I want to just maybe give you a different definition or way of thinking about trauma, because this is something that I kind of fell into in the work that I do, and God gave me a gift to really reach down deep into people's hearts to help them identify what are called strongholds, to help them break those strongholds, and help them actually see cycles and patterns in their life that they've started to observe begin to change, not through just behavior modification, but a change in nature. And so as a result of this discovery of that gift and actually spending thousands of hours on the phone with people that's one part of our conversation when we're working with people, I've learned a lot. And I've learned a lot about how we can think about this topic of trauma differently. And I've learned it mainly through the experiences that I've gone through personally and that transformation, but then I've also learned it in those conversations with other people. So I'm not going to mention any names or personal experiences of other people. I've learned that's not wise, but I also recognize that I'm going to try and take those lessons learned because those are important, and I want you guys to have some of those, and I'm going to infuse them hopefully just subtly throughout. Okay, so trauma, we need a new definition. One of the definitions that you can think about is physical injury. And in medicine, that's how they'd classify trauma, as physical injury, right? Physical injury. In the church setting, in the spiritual context, people classify trauma as the heart wound or something, that's super deep. And people in jest, people might say, oh, well, there's daddy wounds or there's this or that. It's like, yeah, that stuff is real. That stuff is super real. And actually, when you do that to people, you're gaslighting them. I never knew that term, but gaslighting is really like, hey, you're putting somebody out in something that's actually really valid. And you could be even doing that to yourself. So I just want to raise that as the first point of awareness. Another way to think about trauma, shock or upheaval or pain. Okay, an emotional shock following a stressful event or physical injury, which may sometimes lead to long-term, ready for this, anxiety, sadness, depression, anger, irritability, confusion, low sense of self-worth, and I don't need to go on. Okay, the point of that is to say that we all experience some sort of trauma in our life. If we're real with ourselves, right? You can be as happy, go lucky, positive as you want, but the reality is, your depth of experience, I'm going to pause before I go into that thought. The reality is, if you are a positive person, that's one thing. If you have recognition of your pain, that's another thing. And to transform that pain into purpose, that's a whole nother thing. And so I've found that in the process of growing and changing, there's first this step of healing. And that healing needs to happen. Okay, so follow me, right? There's healing, changing, growing. And that healing step needs to happen. Everybody wants to grow, but very few people are willing to do the work, and it's really the inner work to heal. And healed people help people, hurt people just hurt more people. And you see it live right now, happening everywhere. We have hurt people just hurting more people, and their hurt is completely valid. There's a reason people behave. They don't behave just completely irrationally, for as much as we may think that's the case. There are reasons people behave the way they behave, and oftentimes it's because they have traumatic experiences in their life that have never been resolved or healed. And so when we find ourselves reacting to certain situations in our life and we don't understand why, I can give a very, very good guess as to why. And it falls into, one of a handful of categories of childhood trauma or something that we've experienced as traumatic in our life that we've never identified and addressed, overcome, healed from. And as we do that, we're able to actually then not just have behavior modification, but a change in our nature. In other words, things that used to bother us just stop bothering us because we actually have a new perspective. And scientifically, this is like a protein that sits in the prefrontal cortex and changes shape. It's malleable. And then it goes back into another part of your brain, which we know nothing about, by the way. And then you have this new program you run from. I'm going to get into this later, but I just want to let you know that this is real. This is not just something that people say, oh, well, I just need to forgive and forget and I need to move on and all of that. No, if you want to live like a truly deeper life, this stuff that I'm talking about, if you want to live a changed life, this stuff that I'm talking about is literally the foundation. And God's given me a grace to talk about it because He's brought me through so much transformation. He's brought me through so much change myself. Now, I feel God's presence on some of the things that I'm saying right now. Sometimes it takes a little while for me to get started. But if you're just tuning in, we're talking about trauma. and we're talking about how trauma, or the things that we have experienced in our life that have caused pain as a result of shock, and now we have emotional disruption in our life, and we maybe even don't even know how to explain why. It's how all these things shape the way that we interact and engage with not just the world around us, but ourselves and even our Creator. So I'm going to get into this a little bit more, but what I want you to know is that as we define trauma, because that's where we're parked right now, as we define trauma, its impact can be spiritual, mental, emotional, and or physical. Okay? Its impact can be spiritual, mental, emotional, and or physical. And here's one of the key characteristics or traits that God showed me about trauma, and I think a lot of you guys are going to resonate with this, and I never resonated with this until I had actually witnessed my own depravities in life. But trauma leaves you feeling like a victim. Trauma leaves you feeling like a victim, and victims feel powerless. Trauma leaves you feeling like a victim, and victims feel powerless. And I had a victim mentality in my life, and I was a fake powerful person, meaning I used manipulation in order to become a powerful person. That's a fake powerful person. Somebody who uses leverage to become a person in charge. Somebody who tries to navigate a system in order to be in charge, who sees power, prestige, and money all tied up in really the same definition. And a truly powerful person understands their source of power and the magnitude of that power and chooses to use less than what's actually possible. And that's where we have people who are healed understanding where they can exert self-control and limitation in order to become a truly powerful person and direct that energy towards things that are going to be productive. Now, here's the thing, we're all humans and we all have emotional reactions. So I'm not telling you to not be human, but what I am saying is that I've learned the more I've healed, the more I've found, oh my gosh, that area of my life, I don't have that knee-jerk response anymore because I've healed from that. And this area of my life where I have pent up all this stuff and it's never been processed and never been overcome and never actually been able to step into wholeness, man, I still have that defensiveness, or I still have that that desire to try and control and use control as a strategy. And control as a strategy is really just a way of protecting our core hurts or our wound or our pain from our past, because as humans we want to do one of two things, okay? We want to avoid pain or seek pleasure. And when given the choice, we're going to avoid pain. So in our life, what you see is that you develop patterns of behavior, ways of thinking that are going to help you avoid pain, because in your past you might have experienced pain. And so as a child with no true power, because you were literally subject to parents or whoever was taking care of you, whatever system or environment you were in, with no real control, because you didn't A, have consciousness of it, and B, have the ability to do much about it, you develop patterns of thinking and behaving to protect you. And then what happens is you grow up as an adult, and if you don't recognize what those are, those same patterns of behavior and those same patterns of thinking no longer are protecting you. They're actually hurting you, because you've grown into a new situation with new people, and there you are in a totally different circumstance using old patterns of behavior and thinking that are not right for that new circumstance. And so people find themselves in cycles that they can't break out of, and they think it's the world around them, but the reality is it's within them. And that's what I mean by victim mentality, is that we develop victim mentalities because of the trauma that we haven't healed from. And so I'm here to tell you that you can heal from it, that God can help you heal from it. I believe that no matter what you've experienced. And I'm also here to tell you that some of the stuff that you've experienced and you hold in your heart and even in your body as a whole, you didn't necessarily ask for. And it might have happened well before your lifetime. And I share that from my own personal experience, having God take me through a journey where I've actually gone through, and spiritually I've had vision, gone through an inner healing process or processes where I've literally seen generations of this pain and trauma, things that I could have never seen had God not shown me. And I saw it, and it caused weeping within me, and outside here in this world I was weeping, but I was weeping really in my spirit. And so as I was going through that experience, I really developed a new empathy and understanding for this idea of trauma in our lives. Okay. And so I'm hoping that just by me sharing some of this, because I know some of you guys, I know you from past or whatever it might be, and it's like, what is TJ talking about? I've never heard him talk about this. And it's like, yeah, this is what I've been doing the last like 5 years. So I've been learning how to become a healed whole person. And to be honest with you, you can't do it alone. You can't heal yourself. Like I don't believe that you can fully heal yourself. You can do things to support your healing, and your body's designed to heal itself. But I really believe that true healing that I'm talking about comes from God. And it's our understanding and our dependence on Him that really allows us to receive the blessing, which is something that empowers us to live holy, like WHO, the blessing that allows us to live holy and less reactive and become people that help other people and help other people heal because we've gone through healing. So I want you to know that when you're going through identifying some of the things of trauma in your life, you can move from being victim to like a victor. I wanted to use two V words, but just the idea, what's the journey? Well, like you can be a victim or you can be a victor. And when I say you can be a victor, I'm not saying that you suddenly put on rose-colored glasses and everything is great. No, there's a process, and neutral thinking is a part of that process, or accepting that things aren't amazing or weren't great when XYZ happened, or when you're looking online right now and you see stuff that's real, pain that's real. But it's also saying, and it doesn't have to be that way. And it doesn't have to be that way. And so that moves us into a new stage. That moves us into a new stage of growth. Now, in practice, I just want to reference this from a woman I follow. Her name is Nidra Glover Tawwab, and she is a professional therapist. Excellent content on Instagram. By the way, if you're watching, some of the things I'm going to be mentioning are referencing anxiety. I want you to know on Facebook Live, if you're watching and if you find that you want to learn more about this, you can hit the comments and you can have a full hour, 18 minutes. You don't have to watch the whole thing, but you can have that full hour, 18 minutes with another professional counselor, actually, we had an amazing Wednesday webinar, and I want to make that available for you guys. So just know you can access that resource on the comments there. If you're watching on IG Live, you guys can access it. You should be able to access it on my link in my profile, okay? So as in practice, if we talk about, we've defined trauma, right? And it's more than just like somebody having post-traumatic stress syndrome, as I used to like understand the idea of it. It's more than just physical injury or traumatic injury. It's actually like shock, and it's emotional shock following stressful events in our lives. And it could be physical, it could be mental, emotional, spiritual, it could be all the above. But we all experience some sort of this in our lives. Let me just give you a few examples of what it looks like in practice, okay? Verbal abuse. Verbal abuse. Who here has not experienced verbal abuse? Sexual or physical abuse. Being an adult as a child. Inversion. This happens in homes all the time. Where a parent is not mentally able to fulfill a role or physically able to fulfill a role, whatever it might be. And so children ending up fulfilling a role because of parents' lack of maturity. And I do not blame the parent necessarily, right? I'm just stating what is a fact, which is there is parental inversion in homes, and even in good homes where parents are well-meaning parents, where children end up taking responsibility that is not theirs. Moving a lot. This is really important. Some of you guys might not think this, but did you know like the second leading cause, I believe this is a fact, somebody can check this out for me. Second leading cause of depression outside of death of a loved one is like moving across the country. And it's that kind of distance moving. Just like, guys, when you're moving, that is an emotional shock, and it can be extremely difficult, especially if you did a lot as you were younger. Parents who were addicts or absent, right? Witnessing domestic violence. Think about this. Think about what you're looking at every single day right now. I'm not telling you to ignore facts and reality. What I'm telling you is just become aware. Think about what you're paying attention to, okay? I'm talking about what trauma looks like in practice. I'm giving you practical examples, and I want you to think about how this applies to your life right now and the state of the world that we're in, okay? Because I don't have the answer. All I know is that there's a lot of hurt being spread right now. It's right to understand it, recognize it. It's also right to understand what's a healthy boundary for me. Like, what is going to help me be a better person so I can be a better person for other people, right? And witnessing violence, being in unsafe neighborhoods, financial insecurity. Like, I could list like all the things that I just mentioned. I could list probably, if there's 10 things, probably 8 of them that I'm like, yep, those are me. I've had that. Oh, yep, I've had that. And I came from, like I said, good home, good family, good school, good upbringing, all the above. Toxic and or boundaryless relationships. Toxic and or boundaryless relationships. We could talk, there's a whole lot of information about that in a book called Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud, and I think everybody in the world needs to read that. Not having needs met, having parents with unmanaged mental, spiritual, physical, emotional health issues. Just examples. What does it look like to see trauma in practice? What does this mean? Okay, so when we experience now today, okay, so we've defined trauma, we talked about what it looks like in practice. Now today, what does that mean today? Okay, when we experience and address and don't address trauma from our past, okay, when we experience trauma but we don't address it, we grow up to become adults who react based on our memories or our programs. And this is where I want to get into the idea of this from the standpoint of some of the work that Dr. Caroline Leaf and her colleagues are doing. But these memories are programs or proteins that are created from traumatic experiences, then run anytime we encounter people that might trigger us into those traumatic experiences. Let me give you a practical example. A lot of people might come across the idea that I'm my own worst enemy. I've heard that a lot. I'm my own worst enemy. And I used to believe that about myself, to be honest with you, because I had self-sabotaging tendencies that I never really would have claimed as self-sabotaging publicly, but I knew I had them because, for example, I would get a lot of money and then I'd find ways to get rid of it. And what I didn't realize is I had an unhealthy relationship with money where I saw a power dynamic and feeling guilty. So I wanted to get money and then I found ways to get rid of it because I saw money with this duality of I want it for power because money equals power, and then I want to get rid of it because money equals guilt. And so people's money mindset really needs to be shifted when it comes to thinking about this. But I use that as an example because self-sabotaging is one expression of trauma that's gone unaddressed. And so what happened for me, for example, is there would be certain things that I encountered in my life that would trigger that guilt, as one example, right? And you talk about the pressure of privilege. I mean, as an adopted kid who grew up with really like a lot of opportunity is the way that I would describe it. You know, I felt the pressure of privilege as I would walk on the street, and I had these amazing conversations with people who lived on the street, and I continue to have these conversations today. But especially in my 20s, I was starting to come into awakening, and I would have these conversations. A lot of them would say, "Yeah, I went through the adoption care system, and here's why I ended up." And so there were certain things, programs, memories, things that I'd been told, things that had been done to me, things that I had experienced in the way that I didn't necessarily understand how to interpret that experience, or I interpreted it in a way that maybe helped me at one point but hurt me in another. These programs, these memories were triggered, and then I would end up in these self-destructive cycles. Okay, that's trauma unaddressed. And so what's happening right now is when we experience trauma in our life, it actually provokes more trauma. Okay, when we experience trauma in our life, it provokes more trauma. Right now, I'm sitting in my dad's office. Okay, my dad passed away 3 years ago. I watched that experience happen. That provoked a lot of things in my life. That loss provoked more loss. And I'm grateful that I had tools, resources, people, and God's presence and faithfulness, because I had a moment where I lost it. I lost that. Like, God, are you really, like, why have you forsaken me? And I have some verses I'm going to share with you guys because I'm not the only one who's ever felt that, and you might be feeling that right now. And I experienced that, and I started to realize, wow, there is a real depth to the loss that I've experienced in my life, more than I've ever realized. And that loss started, for example, for me, vulnerably, that loss started at birth when I had loss of a genetic tie, right? And then as I grew up, and I had a loving family. I love my mother, love my father, love my sister, all of the above. That's like honor them, 100. But you have to be real with yourself, and you have to look at your life and say honestly, like, wow, that really affected me. In other words, there were subconscious memories that even as a baby I developed, and I operated from those programs. Now, here's what I'm here to tell you, is that if you think you're your own worst enemy, if you truly think you're your own worst enemy, I'm here to tell you that it's not the hardware, it's the software. In other words, it's not you innately. It's the software or the programs or the memories that you have that you're running from, operating from. I'm not saying running from like you're running away from them. I'm saying you're running on, right? When you turn on your computer, right now I'm using Facebook. I'm using the web application. Okay, there's a program that runs. When I do this, this happens. The same thing is true in our lives. When somebody says this, that means that. No, that's not true. That may have been true in the past, but it might not be the case anymore. And when you continue to have that reaction to people, you are literally continuing to spill over that hurt that you had from your past to somebody else, and maybe unfairly. And that's what's happening in the world right now. We have this happening all the time. Yes, there are structural issues. Those structural issues are rooted in the heart. And we have a lot of heart issues, and the heart work is the hard work. The heart work is the hard work. You can enact whatever law you want. The heart work is really the hard work that a lot of people don't want to do. And they'll fill themselves with I've been there. You'll fill yourself with distractions to just avoid the heart work. And so what I'm here to tell you is like, hey, when you actually do the heart work and the hard work, you're going to find that a lot of things in your life will change because you start seeing the world differently. And I really believe it's in that transforming of our mind that I believe God does, right? And it says it in the Bible, and now science has proven it to be true. That's what's crazy about it, is we have certain things that we're predisposed to in our lives. So think about it this way. The Bible says that our predispositions can be the strongest up to the 3rd generation, but last as long as 10 generations. Okay? Our predispositions can be strongest up to 3 generations, but can last up to 10 generations or longer. I believe longer, but I say 10 because I know that's there. Now, I've had 14 generations of generational sin broken off my life, so I don't even know what that means or how that looks. But the point is, I know what that means, but I don't know how that looks in the reference I just gave. The point of this is to say we have predispositions, and those predispositions could be traumatic predispositions, not just alcoholism. So if your parents went through traumatic experiences, guess what? They might have passed some of that on to you genetically. If your parents went through positive experiences, they might have passed some of that on to you genetically. So we have predispositions, positive or negative. The good news is we're finding through epigenetics that your brain can actually change based on the environment that you're in. But the environment that you're in is cultivated based on what you consume. So you have an external environment and you have an internal environment, right? And so the external environment is, yes, I have books behind me. Okay, that shapes the environment I'm in, and it's definitely going to influence how I grow and change, right? But so does our internal environment, what you eat. Not just with your mouth, but with your eyes and your ears. These are going to shape your genetic unlocking. And so what we have here is that when we've developed this software, okay, that we live by, it's when we go through this awakening to maybe some of the patterns and cycles that aren't working, that we realize maybe the software needs to change, maybe the memories need to change. And that's when God gives us a new perspective. That protein changes shape, and then it goes back into whatever part of our brain. We call it the subconscious part of our mind, different description, brain and mind, but we'll say it's the subconscious part of our mind, right? So from the conscious part of our mind to the subconscious part of our mind, we now have a new program running. So God gives you a new perspective, that protein changes shape, and it goes back into the subconscious part of your mind, and now we have a change in nature, because when somebody gives you the same behavior that you've seen over and over and over again, where you used to just react with so much anger and aggression, now because you've gone through that healing, because you've gone through that perspective shift and an actual memory shift, an actual protein shift, now when that person gives that same cue, you have a different response. And it's not so much a behavior modification as it is a change in your nature, because you have genuinely seen a new perspective on a memory. Okay? And so what that looked like for me when I started seeing new perspectives on memories is it didn't mean that pain just completely left. It meant that I saw that Jesus was with me. It meant that I actually went through encounters with God, these wild encounters with God. I'm not saying close my eyes, sing kumbaya. I'm saying actual encounters with God where he was showing me things about my life that nobody could have shown me. He was showing me visions of my past, showing me memories, showing me things that were really painful. And he was saying, hey, I'm here. I got this. And this is not the end. Now, here's what's amazing about it, okay? I want to put this as a reference point, okay? Somebody that we work with is in charge of security at a major airport, and they witnessed a shooting once, okay? And they've gone through, it was a major shooting, and they've gone through, the reason I share that context is they have experienced a lot of traumatic events on the work site. Forget about like personal life. One of the things that they were taught in those traumatic events is to not look directly at the trauma. Now that's very different from what I just described, where God took me to a place in my mind, okay, and in my heart. He took me there and he said, hey, I got a new perspective for you. We're looking directly at this thing. We're going back to that memory and we're looking directly at it. And that brought a lot of healing. So why would these experts who see traumatic situations all the time advise people in charge of security to not look directly at the trauma? And the reason is that they need to be able to execute. They need to be able to continue. And if they look directly at the trauma of the situation, plane crash, whatever it is, then they might freeze. So they have to be able to execute in that situation. And so in order to execute, they look away from the trauma. Now, that's fine, but that doesn't mean that it's resolved. It allows you to move through the situation. Okay? Many times in our life, we have gone through experiences that we don't ever really experience. We've looked away from the situation just so we can move through the situation, just to move forward. And that is a reality for people right now. We need to be doing a lot of moving forward. But at the same time, the only way to really heal from it is to actually look at it, is to actually accept it. And we're going to get into some of the practicals on that. But actually accept it and ask God for a new perspective on it. And once we're able to do that, not with our overwhelming willpower and positive mindset. No, I'm saying like allowing God to like work in your heart, transform your mind, do something that you couldn't do on your own. And once we're able to do that, that's when we heal. But if we just ignore these experiences, if we don't experience the experiences that we live through, you better believe that they'll come up in one way, shape, or form at another time in your life. And it might be as subtle as some conversation that you're having with your significant other. It might be in the way that you see your bank account. It might be the way you encounter other people of a different race, ethnicity, whatever it might be. There's a number of things. And for all my social justice warriors out there, the best way to fight injustice is to get healing for your own trauma. I promise you that. Because forgiveness is the only way. Forgiveness is the only way, and it is not easy. But forgiveness is the only way that we can actually get to an end point with divisiveness. And so it's about, and by the way, forgiveness is for you so much as it is for the other person. Forgiveness sets you free, and God gives you forgiveness freely, right? So there's this whole situation that we experienced where somebody that we were working with, they had never really looked at trauma. And it makes sense because that's the advice they were given as experts. But what's important is we had to teach them, hey, this is actually something you have to look at if you want to go through the process of healing, changing, and growing. Okay? We can't just do the growth hacks and expect it to be a sustainable shift in your life. Okay? We're going to have to do some of the healing process first, lay the foundation, Otherwise, you're just building a house of cards. It may look nice to everybody else, but wait till the storm comes. That thing ain't going to last. So, as we talk about trauma today, okay, experiences of trauma, we talked about witnessing violence, injustice, hearing violence, being not being heard. I want you guys to know being ignored or being shut down or silenced or told or shown you're not valued, or people telling you your feelings aren't valid. All that stuff, that's traumatic. Some side effects of it are excessive worrying, flashbacks, depression. I'm not diagnosing anybody. I'm just giving you some insight. Mood issues, post-traumatic stress, of course. Self-sabotage, I described some of that in my money mindset. Health issues, hormonally. Guys, this will be a huge discussion, and I talk about a lot in my book, Back to Basics. Hormonally, it's something I'm working on actively. I'm going to keep it to the topic at hand, but I want to reference this because hormones need to have harmony. Hormones need to have harmony. And one of the big issues for us is that people have their hormones out of whack. Testosterone, cortisol, their estrogen, all kinds of different things are just messed up. And so when you have your hormones imbalanced, it actually causes a lot more difficulty in this process for healing. So that's why eating right, getting sleep, having some active rest. Active rest is huge. We're going to talk about that. These are things that are practical that you can do that are going to set you up for success when you're going through this process of healing on your journey and I call it for, maybe wholeness, but I think it's a number of things. It's really just being a healthy person. So what's next? So as we, kind of broke down, okay, how do we define trauma? What is it really like? What's it caused by? And how does that look today? Like what does that look like in our lives? So if you're experiencing like certain reactions that you're not familiar with, and this is new to you for the first time because of what you're watching or reading, and like, guys, I've gone through a lot of this stuff where I've actually experienced some of this stuff, these like emotional responses, or gone through this inner work or whatever, and I'm still getting, there's triggers or other things. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so much. Everything that you're reading and seeing right now, it's so much. So I want you guys to be mindful of that. I want you to be mindful of that because it's not to say you stay uninformed. That's not what I'm saying. It is to say that you are what you eat. And so whatever you're feeding into your environment, externally or internally, okay, if you're exposing yourself to a lot, then you need to give yourself, right, if you're going to be out there and protesting, all good, give yourself space to process that too. Give yourself space to actually understand like what's going on and experience that experience, right? Same is true if you're just going to go ahead and, go crazy reading and watching all the things that you're seeing online. Like, if you're not going to have a filter, understand that there's a repercussion to that. And what I mean by that is that, and I'm not saying that, that because other people who didn't have a choice and went through experiences, went through them, that like it's okay for you to not go through them. What I am saying is like, well, just because somebody else died in a car crash doesn't mean I need to go perform that same car crash, right? It's like, it's important to understand what happened there. It's important to learn from that. It's important to grow from that. It's not important that I go do that same thing over and over again or watch that same thing over and over again. That's not healthy for me. And so I just want to help like by giving you some perspective and even just permission to like establish a boundary. It's okay to have a boundary with this stuff going on right now. And frankly, just for your life, like it's a healthy thing to have boundaries for your life. As we think about what's next, once we become aware in the process of transforming, so we go from victim to victor is like the idea, right? If we're going from victim where we have traumatic experiences and we're in this victim state, okay, well, what does it look like to be in a victor state? Well, it's like, honestly, yeah, you're going through that process of transforming. So from here to here, you have a transformation process, and there's awareness and then acceptance, action, and accountability or community. And so as you're going from awareness, hey, I've identified, wow, like all those things that TJ mentioned, whoa, verbal abuse, I like allow that in my life every day. My boss is verbally abusive or passive aggressive and controlling, and I allow that every single day. Wow, I might have experienced trauma in my workplace. Toxic relationships. Oh my gosh, I have a toxic relationship with all my friends. Maybe I need new friends, but maybe more importantly, I need to understand what healthy boundaries look like. Maybe financial insecurity. I'm giving you real life examples of things that I've gone through. Like, these things actually shape you, and they shape the memories that you have and the programs you run from, operate off of. So if you're not aware of them, if you haven't gone through the awareness phase, well, that's the first part. That's the first step. The second step is going through acceptance. And so once we're aware of it, now we need to accept. And so in the context of today's world, guys, we need to acknowledge and accept there's like real grieving. Like, if you don't know what to do, that's what happens when you're going through grief. That's what happens. It's real. It's super real, and it's hard. And so if you're grieving, I want you to know that's 100% okay, and that's accepted, and that's valid. If you're angry, that's 100% okay. Like, that stuff is okay. It's okay to feel those things, and the better opportunity that we have to feel those things in a, I'll call it like a safe way, but the better opportunity we have to feel those things and feel validated about those things is the better chance we're going to move through that process of transforming and away from being a victim, right? So as we acknowledge, as we accept that grief, then we can move into action, right? And so action really looks like, and I know I'm on Facebook Live, my camera's going in and out because I keep moving my hands, but action really looks like being careful with what you're taking in through your eyes and your ears. Action really looks like taking a moment away and having peace and setting a boundary for yourself and saying, you know what, like, I can't today. It's just like, it's real, it's important, whatever it is that's going on, but like, I really need to, if at all possible, take a break, and I need to get away from my own health. Okay. It also, practical action looks like processing with people who are positively affirming you, validating you, and also just not letting you stay in that place for too long. It's important to be in that place. It's important to move from that place too, and you got to know when it's time to hold them or fold them. And so I think it's really important for you guys to have that as well. Lastly, I want to give you just permission to respond in ways that align with you. So specifically to today's events, in the world, but even in the context of your own life, like, as you think about moving through that process, becoming aware, accepting, moving into action, as you think about like moving into community, accountability with that, being like, hey, this is what I'm going through, I've identified that there's something over here that I'm trying to work through, and I need to get over here, but I'm struggling, and I just need some help, or I just need a process. I just need to talk about this. I just need to maybe respond in this way, even though everybody else is responding in this way. That's okay. And so when you give yourself permission to align with a response that's right for you, you also give yourself permission to learn. As you learn how to have alignment in your responses, you'll learn what's right for you and what's not right for you. Okay? Now, last thing I'll say is there's some really powerful stories, really, really powerful stories, and then I'll close here. But there's some really powerful stories that we've had where we've watched people go through. I've heard and watched people go through, and I say heard, like on the phone, incredible breakthrough just from God literally leading them in their life into a transformed mind. And I heard something earlier today, if y'all follow Pastor Mike Todd. He said it so well. He said, man, my feelings are lying to me. My feelings are lying to me. You know how I know that's true? Because emotions and feelings are different. Emotions and feelings are different. Emotions are our visceral response. Feelings are our perceptions of our emotions. Our perceptions of our emotions are based on our experiences or memories. And our memories, if not resolved within us, if not going through that healing process, our memories can deceive us, can lead us to destruction, can lead us to temptation and things that are not of God. And so when he said, my feelings are lying to me, I said, I know that's true. And I've experienced that too. He said, the only thing, as a result of my feelings lying to me, he said, the only thing that I can believe that we need right now is transforming of our mind. And the only way that happens is through truth. And he was talking about it in context of Jesus, and he was saying, man, I know that Jesus can lead me. I know that he can help me. I know that he can transform me, but man, I feel everything different sometimes because of my experiences. And I think that there's alignment with that. So I just have a few verses if this resonates with you. But even when I call out or cry for help, he shuts out my prayer. Lamentations 3 verse 8. That was Jeremiah, a prophet. He was saying, man, God just doesn't listen. Even if I summoned him, and he responded, I did not believe he would give me hearing. That's Job 9 verse 16. David, how long, Lord, will you forget me forever? Psalm 13:1. And even Jesus, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Matthew 27:46. And so God is the point of that is to say, like, people biblically and in throughout history have experienced times where they felt like God is just not present in their memories, right? In their life, in their lifetime. And and if we have a perspective of just here on earth, we'll still see God's faithfulness, but we still don't know the end of the story, because the end of the story is not in this side of eternity. The end of the story is on the other side of eternity. It's much bigger perspective. And so I just want to encourage you guys with the fact that God's in control of our circumstances even when we aren't. God's in control of our circumstances even when we aren't. And so even those circumstances that you identify and start becoming aware of throughout, maybe just listening to this, um, even those circumstances, God was in control of those circumstances. Even now, God's in control of those circumstances, even when we aren't. But I believe we need to come to Him, because I've seen some wild transformation of people going from point A to point B, victim to victor, and I've seen that happen over and over and over again. And it's simply by people turning to God and saying, God, help me with this, because I do not have a heart for that person as a result of this experience. My parent, my coworker, my girlfriend, my this, my that. Like, I've seen people's hearts literally change from being turned away from their family to wanting to work for their family. I've seen people's hearts completely change towards their significant other. I mean, there's just so much stuff. There's so many amazing stories. One of my mentors, his wife and him are celebrating, gosh, I want to say 40 some years of marriage. And and he was in jail for 12 of those years. And you know what she did? She took her kids to see him every weekend, even though he committed one of the largest white collar crimes in history. And it's a part of his testimony now, but forgiveness and reconciliation is real. 99.9%, they're like, the probability of them being married still to this day is unbelievable. But it's what God does when He transforms our mind and transforms our heart. That's at the root of our mind. I believe it. And when He transforms our heart. And so the root of all the stuff I'm talking about today, how you engage with the world, all the experiences, all the memories that you've had, it's all from the root of your heart. And so if the root of your heart isn't right, if it's a weed in there, right, let God pull that weed out for good. Let Him get to the root of that and let Him replace it with something new. And so that practically looks like new memories, new perspective on old memories. It practically looks like asking God for His perspective on current situation, but He's in control even if we're not. And I want to encourage you guys with that. Okay. Any questions before we phase out here? Any questions from either IG or Facebook? You guys can post in the comments, but also just want to let you guys know while you're posting any questions. I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate you listening. And I'm happy to talk about anything that, for questions wise, happy to talk about anything that you thought would be insightful to learn more about, or anything that was not talked about that you were hoping you could learn more about. But in either case, if you guys are listening, I want you to know one of the things I mentioned, and one of the applications of what we see in trauma unaddressed, is anxiety and worry. And there's it's a really good webinar that we did, Wednesday webinar. So we do webinars every Wednesday. It's the first one we've done live. We normally have private webinars. So if you want to access this one, called The Truth About Anxiety, if you're on IG, you can go to my profile, click on it. You can watch it. It's a full, free resource, hour 18, hour 15 minutes, something like that, with Claire Von Call, professional counselor. Amazing. We had your guys' questions. We walked through all kinds of resources and frameworks and just things that she sees every day. Really, really helpful stuff with just addressing something that I think is so prevalent on people's minds right now that they might not have historically ever resonated or associated with. So that's on Facebook, that's on my comment section, and on Instagram, it's in my bio. And just look for The Truth About Anxiety. You guys can watch it. And if you want to, you can sign up. You can get more information whenever we have more webinars coming up. But if we don't have any questions, I just want you guys to know that I appreciate you guys. And thank you so much for joining.